Hey, everybody. This is going to be our spoiler-filled panel where we discuss The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Get in the video there. This is my signed copy because I got to meet him at school. And I wanted to bring together a bunch of fans of this book that I love so much. I recently listened to it again. It's the first time I've ever listened to it. And it's a ton of fun. And I wanted to get some other people's opinions on it. And I know we have all read it. Deanie is the most recent, and we're really excited about it. So as we jump in, I wanted to introduce everybody. My name is Ramsey. I'm from the Rajathon channel.
I'll go. I'm Angela, and my channel is Literature Science Alliance, and now I will pass it to Deanie.
I'm Deanie from Deanie.
Michael Nip from the channel Michael Nip.
Yeah.
I'm the other Michael from Pints and Paperbacks.
The real Michael.
Everyone just calls him Pints, though.
It's just Pints.
Yeah. I haven't been called Michael once since I've been here.
Alrighty, so let's start with an easy one. Who is everybody's favorite character and why? Pints, you want to start?
Yeah, that's really easy. Kaladin. And Kaladin's like my favorite in like lots of books. Like in like the whole of the fantasy genre, Kaladin's probably in the top 5. I really like him. I think he's a good, he's like a, a troubled protagonist, or like a troubled hero or whatever, struggling hero. And I don't know. He's like got that angstiness to him, but he's not whiny to the point where it's annoying, And then he goes through some tough stuff and he gets his guys in order and gets his team in order, and he's awesome. And he only gets better as the book goes on and as the series goes on.
You want to go next, Michael?
Sure. Yeah. So I feel like for the first book especially, it also has to be Kaladin. Though I love pretty much every single character in the first book, even Shallan, who I think a lot of people from the first book kind of don't like as much. But Kaladin is just... he's the character you're supposed to like. He's the underdog. He's like a sad boy emo who's also a jock who is like a soldier. Like he has the ultimate, picking himself up and succeeding against all odds. The arc there is so strong that I feel like that's just an easy answer. I think most people feel the Kaladin love.
Yeah, because I love Kaladin as well. So we're just all going to say Kaladin, aren't we? I like, for things that haven't been mentioned, I really like how it kind of deals with brings in a mental health aspect since he's going through trauma and everything, and how he has to work through that. And then you get Syl, who is like kind of that brighter... I like their dynamic as well. So that, but then if we're not mentioning Kaladin, as a secondary favorite character is Yasna, because one, she's just like this badass who just... So you said spoilers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Definitely.
so spoilers.
Spoil
So I just
everything.
got to the...
We're allowed to cuss too?
Keep the F word out.
Okay.
PG, not PG-13 then.
So I remember I sent this to Michael Nip. I was just like, I just got to this part where like Yasna just killed people for a philosophy lesson. I was like, I love this. It's so stupid and just out there, but I was like, she's a great teacher. Not the murder part, but like otherwise she's a great teacher. So secondary, she's my favorite.
So I guess I'm going to be... So I had to look at this through 2 lenses, because I was answering this like, what would 17-year-old Angela say? Because that's when I first read this book. And for sure, I was Kaladin and Shallan. I don't know. I like Shallan. I actually like her less as the series progresses for reasons.
Oh, interesting.
Well, she stresses me out later.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But I like Kaladin, obviously, because his plot is the focal point of the book. The biggest highs are with Kaladin. Like, so if you're enjoying the story, you have to enjoy Kaladin. But I think, so my favorite in the series right now is a very controversial pick, and it makes more sense with later books, is Adolin, I think. I really like Adolin. And I also wanted to bring up Pattern, because Pattern's great.
He's not in this one.
Yeah,
He's not
Patrick's
in
not the one.
And
No.
he's in Words of Radiance.
I thought he
Who?
was at the end with he's in the shadows with
I don't think they name him yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she
he
doesn't
shows
drop
up-
him.
Okay, technically speaking, Pattern
He's
is
there.
in this one,
But
but
we
you don't know
know
anything
he's
about
Pattern.
it.
The only reason I
Oh,
know
he
about him is
is?
because
They
I
all
just-
have to be on this panel. I haven't read this book in 3 years, but I have read it 3 times. They all blend together.
It's okay. Yeah, I feel like remembering in a series where things cut off is impossible once you know things, especially because there's so much foreshadowing in this book.
hmm
Well, and
Yeah.
like Kaladin for me has, I get that you guys all like him later on, but he's really, he's plateaued for me.
Yes. I mean, I don't want to ruin anything for Dini, but I do feel like his arc is so not complete in this book, but mostly complete by this book. That it's nice though, because I feel like that gives a lot more chances for the other people to shine and get their own specific arcs. I mean, everyone kind of knows that the Words of Radiance is the Shallan thing, and the Oathbringer's Dalinar's. Dalinar is one of my favorites for the series, but if we're just talking about the first book alone, I feel like that's a little bit of a cheat pick, even though he's still awesome in the first book.
Well, and also 17-year-old me did not appreciate Dalinar's struggles in this book. He
Uh,
was boring.
Sure. Oh, but the freaking ending with we'll
Yeah.
get there, I'm sure.
We'll get
Yeah,
there.
See, I'm the old man, and I'm a Dalinar guy.
You-
Like,
That's the thing.
Ah.
I'm reading this as an older dad, so maybe that's it.
yeah, like just the way that he, like, my son that was running around just a little bit ago, he has autism, and so like Dalinar and the way that he treats Ririn, and just the way that he is like, I understand he can't do some things, but he can do other things, and then, book 1, yeah, it was Kaladin, but through the whole series, Dalinar is clearly my favorite, and it's on a reread, Dalinar's even better because you just see all the things he does, and like I remember, like I was driving in the car when he catches the Chasm Fiend, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So I think I will say now that Dalinar's probably my favorite.
I mean, in reference to Dalinar, we don't have to talk about it a ton, but I think it is applicable to some people. The sort of religious struggle that he has with dealing with the codes and following the book is something that I think a lot of people who are religious can also identify with. And so that was a really strong element, I think, for me as well.
One of the coolest things I saw this last time reading it was when Adeline finally realized why Dalinar was following the codes. Like when he looked at the other soldiers in the war camps, and he was like, "Oh,
Sure.
wait a minute, my dad has a point."
He has a real awakening moment there at the turning point.
It was really cool. So let's go. Next question is the plot point that was the most exciting to you.
I just liked watching mainly Bridge 4 and how Kaladin was able to get this group of men who are just run down and everything and be able to get them together. So I just liked that, like kind of watching that through the entire thing until they like became a cohesive unit. They loved each other and they were able to like get themselves out of, depression and everything, or at least like be able to cope. And I just liked watching that go throughout the entire thing because you saw all of the struggles and you saw the high points and everything.
For me, I don't want it to make it sound like the rest of the book wasn't super interesting, but nothing can top the back-to-back reveals at the end of this book. In terms of my first time reading it, like, I don't remember the order of it, but when you learn about who the Parshendi are and that the god's not actually there and that these are just a recording, and then when you have the last scene with Sed, like those are all within like 100 pages, and my brain was like, I didn't have another book. He was actually going to go write the Wheel of Time for God knows how long. So my heart was sad. But I love a good Sanderson reveal sequence. He's pretty known for that. But I also
think
Kaladin and Syl's connection throughout the book.
the ending reminds me of the way that Orson Scott Card writes. Because because Orson Scott Card will also like write this whole book, and then the last like 100 to 50 pages is just insane, mind blowing. Like what twist, reveal, climax, like. So it reminds me a lot of that, but also the blood thing, the thing where it's like the start of every chapter. There's like a little snippet of somebody
yeah.
dying,
Oh
and
yeah.
then you
yeah,
find
those are
out that
great.
this little harmless old guy king is like running this thing where he's like just letting people die, and they got people recording stuff. I thought that was amazing. Like that
Yeah,
was like what?
They even said that like if they weren't dying fast enough, they would like cut their wrists and let them die fast.
Extend it, yeah.
It's so good.
What I noticed this time around was that Syl is Tien, and that when
Sure.
Kaladin was down, Tien could get him to come back just by handing him a rock or doing something like that. And so it was really neat to see that Syl became his Tien. Like as he's standing at the honor chasm and he's like ready to jump, Syl's what brings him back. Whenever he's having a bad moment, Syl brings him back. And I thought that was really a good parallel where Tien becomes his Tien later on.
And that moment was what I was probably going to mention. During my reread, that's the moment that hit me really hard, which is Syl in her naivety. I don't know how to say that word. She's very naive when she brings the poison to him because she thinks that's going to make him happy, because that was the thing that he clung to for hope when he was a slaver. When he gets that and he realizes how silly it is, but it still cheers him up. It's as you said, the exact parallel to Tien bringing him the rock on the days of the weeping when he's having his like seasonal depression thing. It is a super powerful moment. Obviously, I think there are lots and lots of moments we could pick for those, but during my reread, that was just a real that and maybe this is because I just finished Oathbringer, but like the final scene where Gavilar dies hit me real hard the second read through, just where his final message is, find the most important words a man can say or whatever, hit me real hard after finishing Oathbringer. And I feel like that's one of the things you can get when you do a reread so close together.
Also, we've been talking about them, but here's my bookmark with Kaladin and Syl on it. I don't know if you guys can see it. But
it's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
It's from the people who did the Way of Kings soundtrack I was telling you guys about.
Oh, nice.
I need to listen to that.
It's really, really good.
What is it?
Piper. It's the Black Piper, and it's just called. Just type in Way of Kings book soundtrack, and I think you'll see it. If not, I'll send a link in our Discord.
Yeah, I think it is on YouTube. Yeah.
Are those the same people that did all the Wheel of Time songs?
I don't know.
Because there's a bunch of people that did those, like they recorded them.
I have no clue. When I was looking at their Kickstarter, they didn't reference it, which I feel like they would have. But, yep.
So have you guys read Wheel of Time as well?
I've only read the first 2.5 books.
Yeah, so I've read the first one and like a third books, but I think the Stormlight Archive is way more entertaining of a book than Wheel of Time is.
Infinitely so, I say.
He's just so readable. And he's got interesting characters and interesting worlds.
Well, I think Sanderson purposely made his prose accessible for the story to shine, and Jordan purposely wanted his prose to describe as much of the culture as possible, which means there's a lot more weeds.
Yeah, you could have cut the Wheel of Time in half, and it'd been 7 great books. But then you hear everybody talk about the slog from 8 to 11, where there's great stuff in those books, but it's like, do I really have to read about more politics? This is ridiculous. I can skip this page, right? I've already read it once. Okay.
There's ways to make the politics interesting, like George Martin. His politics is infinitely interesting. I feel like those books are page turners.
Oathbringer in this series has a ridiculous amount of politics, I think, and it's still pretty interesting. But
yeah, it's not as good as the first 2, but it's it's still A+.
It's longer than the first two, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It's the longest by a few 50 pages or something. I can't remember.
Ugh.
The audiobook is
They're
10
all
hours longer than The Way of Kings.
Oh wow, yeah, that's more. That's got to be more than 50 pages. That's gonna be like 200 pages.
You've obviously not seen my video where I hold up Words of Radiance and Oathbringer because it makes no sense.
Yeah, like it and Way of Kings are the same size.
Hold it up higher.
Oh, damn.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
That's
it
a
was
long
a 44-hour audiobook when I listened to it.
holy moly.
But then Oathbringer's pretty darn big too.
Oathbringer is 55 hours on audio.
Why
So I waited until Oathbringer came out in mass market paperback because that's what I had the other two in, and so I got it in that. And now I'm realizing that if I want to like keep that up for my collection, I'm gonna have to wait like a year after whenever the new one comes out for them to put it out in mass market. No, I'm just gonna undo it and buy them all in like hardback or whatever.
The only reason I picked this one up is because I was going through Target and he like randomly signs copies, and I was like,
What?
Signed? I'm
What the
buying it.
crap?
He does
That's
that,
awesome.
Yeah.
Or a bookstore, he'll just like, do you have any of my books? And because he purposely
Yeah.
made his signature super easy to do. He's been doing those
When-
live streams on YouTube where he's just
Yeah.
He was coming to Atlanta for Dragon Con when I got The Way of Kings signed, and he's like, just signed all the books in the airport. Just randomly signed them all. Like, it's pretty cool.
Even the ones that I didn't write.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't do that. He's not one of those authors. Let's bring it.
I'm one of those authors. I just sign books and
I would. I'd be like, I can pull this off.
There actually is an author right now who's doing that, and people are unhappy.
well, see, I signed the author's name of the book. They might think.
Bring
it's
it back to the Way of Kings.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's just me.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Has everybody answered the plot point question? I can't remember.
What was the favorite character?
What was your
the
favorite
plot
plot point?
Oh, plot point. I thought you said popcorn.
Ty
Sorry.
said blood. I said the ending. Nip was talking about Syl with the poison thing. Deanie, what'd you say?
Just Bridge 4 and the entire thing.
Okay.
The Bridge
Right.
4 moment, like when they finally get them all together, like, you know, cohesive. Everybody's on the same side. I remember I was like waiting and I was like getting work done in my car and I was like in the waiting room reading it. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, he's so cool. And then everybody was like, who's this crazy person?
The thing that gets everything started is when they freaking get together and have some food together, which is like so powerful and true. Just have some people sit down and eat together. They'll start talking.
New favorite
yeah.
character. I totally forgot. It's Rock, right? What's his name?
Oh yeah,
Rock.
Rock.
Well, nobody can pronounce it his real name.
Rock.
I don't actually know what his name is. I can't
Oh,
remember right now.
No, I've been trying to read it to my wife, and there is no way I can speak any of the passages when he's like
They
speaking
do it in
natively.
the audio book.
I know, it's
They-
crazy.
Yeah.
There are times
Just
when I
it
have
rolls it right
bookmarked-
off the tongue.
Yes, there are times when I have bookmarked sections of the audiobook just to listen to him say those
See
words.
if I can find it.
Yeah.
No, actually, he is the MVP. He's pretty great. I want more of his content.
He's a very funny character because, like, whenever like Kaladin does something weird, he's like, "Oh, we call that mahili haka liki liki hula hula hula."
Here's sick lowlanders.
Yeah.
Well, and so
It's
Sanderson,
Air Cyclolanders, yeah.
so Sanderson does this thing, at least if you've read enough of his books enough time, where you realize, okay, these characters are different, but they're similar. So like Kaladin and Kelsier/Vin are very similar, and like Serene and Shallan are similar from series. And Ham from Mistborn is very similar to Rock, in my opinion. And I'm just like, okay.
I've heard people compare him to
haven't read
Drax
any
from Guardians of
Mistborn.
the Galaxy.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah,
Me too.
totally.
I would like to think that Rock is smarter than Drax.
Well, that's my wife was like, he's kind of like a smarter Drax. He's just super blunt and he's big and
He's
kind
kind of like
Also,
Korg from Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, somebody
yeah.
said that. Yeah,
That was
somebody said
me.
that. Yeah, it was you. Okay.
To you.
But
When he's talking about filling out the pamphlets and only his mom and his stepdad showed up, that was hilarious.
Wait,
spoilers
Korg.
for Thor Ragnarok now.
The blue rock guy on Thor
Is that the
Ragnarok.
guy who he's like, oh yeah.
Hey, man. whoa, we're gonna go over here and that guy's invisible. What's up with that?
Hey, we're starting a revolution. You want to join?
We didn't have enough pamphlets.
The world is not. We don't deserve Taki Joaquin.
No, yeah, he's great.
Something kind of related, but also a little bit tangential.
Oh no.
Who all read the book versus the audiobook?
I switched off.
No,
I did both, yeah.
Okay.
I can't complete a 1,000-page book without both.
Well, so that's the thing. I do the ebook and the audiobook so I can sync my progress or whatever. Because I feel like especially if you're listening to the audiobook, there are some characters, obviously this is a magical world. It is not our world, but they have very similar traits to some of our own cultures. Like you mentioned, Rock's language sounds very like Hawaiian-like.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what do you guys think Lopin and Lopin's culture is supposed to be based on the audio versus the book? Because in my brain, they were very different accents and very different types of when the audiobook guy, what's Michael Kramer, when he reads it, he's like Australian, and he has a very different accent than if you read the book. I think he's supposed to be Hispanic of some sort. Like, it comes across that way strongly. And most people online said that. But when Michael Kramer read it, he just decided to go Australian with it. It's weird.
I was
Yeah, I'd
thinking
have to
like Cajun. Like down south swamp.
I could
Like
kind
Cajun.
of see that. It's weird because they're using made up slang and made up words and things. But I double checked on Reddit to make sure I wasn't crazy, and like most people were thinking that he was supposed to be like Latino. But then when the audio, I remember reading a bunch of it in ebook format, and then when the audiobook started getting there, I was like, "What in the world? Who is that?"
So I thought I don't remember where Lopin's from, but the Herdazian people are supposed to be more
Herdazian.
tangentially Hispanic, Greek.
Yeah, it's them, the Herdazians.
Yeah, so that's what I always thought, but I didn't base that off my reading experience because I'm horrible at picking up details. So
Well, like I always thought that like Seth was Asian. Like was what made kind of like I always thought about.
no, but like I told you this in a different thing. Like Sanderson
Yeah.
did this weird thing where he blended like Italian and Asian into the
Sure.
like so the eyes of Seth are actually not like they actually have the double like my eye thing. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called.
A
but-
bullet?
Yeah, so Seth has more Western eyes.
Mm-hmm. Because they say like they're real big.
Versus Alethi they have more Asian eyes, Eastern eyes.
So speaking of Seth,
Yeah, I pictured everyone as an anime character.
Well, that's because
Yeah.
the fan art. You can't.
Well,
help it.
I don't know what it is about like the story itself. I just imagine it as an anime.
I've said
Yeah,
before
well,
that it's actually
Like, I
Kingdom
could see
Hearts.
Akira Toriyama or
Well,
whatever his name is, like coming up with this story.
somebody was saying that Sanderson was a huge Berserk fan. That's why Shardblade is so
Oh,
big.
dude, I could see
So
that.
He like Guts is like he's channeling Guts.
That's cool.
I
So,
could totally see that. I also totally see Space Marines whenever they're talking about shard armor and stuff from Warhammer.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like
If you don't know what that is, just pull up
Halo. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Halo armor basically.
I'm trying to get started on
way
it.
bigger than Halo armor.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Like,
speaking of Seth, though,
You need the pauldrons, yeah.
Yeah.
let's do reaction to Seth's intro and then the final where the big reveal with Teravangian.
I just
Whoever
feel
wants to
bad
start
for
that.
the boy, like always.
Oh, yeah.
I just feel really bad for him all the time. I love his opening scene because I just think he's a badass. Like he's so cool. But especially if you ever do listen to that song, I'll share it in our Discord. That song is perfect for that prologue scene. It's just but I don't know, I'm glad his arc evolves throughout the series because I just feel like he gets no agency. I just feel so bad for him. He just exists.
Maybe this is a slight spoiler, so I'm sorry, but we never fully understand why he is the way that he is up to this point in the series, as far as I understand.
Not in
Like,
book one, no.
I've read with all three, and I know parts of it, but still, like, I think there's still a significant amount of gaps in what we know about him pre Way of Kings, and so The other thing I was going to mention slightly earlier when you were talking about the prose in The Wheel of Time versus the prose in this book, the opening section with Zeth with the assassination is the only time I have seen so far in my reread, and that I can remember from my first read, where there is ever exposition for exposition's sake that isn't something that the characters are also experiencing naturally. The only time that I can think of in the entire book where the characters are not learning information at the same time that you are is when the very beginning of the book, when it explains the lashings when Zeth is going after Dalinar, or not Dalinar, Gavilar.
Oh, where he's like, I just lashed down, or whatever he's talking about.
Yeah,
like,
well,
throwing all the
it
furniture
describes
and
all
that.
3 types of lashes and what they do. Yeah, that's the only section I've seen so far that is purely exposition.
It's very textbooky.
Yeah.
That's the one, that's, like, I love Sanderson's writing, but there's sometimes where it gets, like, really textbook when he does his magic system. Like, in Warbreaker, it does that too.
I could
where I'm
argue,
like, it's so...
It feels more like a science fiction to me. I'm reading Warbreaker now, and like it is magic, clearly, but the way that his magic systems are so hard, it almost feels way more like science fiction to me than fantasy.
Wait till
I
we
think you
get
said
into my
that in an interview
favorite
one time.
interlude of this section. You'll realize how sciencey it is.
Oh, okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no. It's interesting when people talk about the info dumping textbook style Sanderson uses, because I do think that's true, but I've also read a lot of really boring textbooks, and this is not boring to me. So I guess there's an art to it, and I don't mind it.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't mind it. It's just it's not evocative, you know. It's not fluffy. It's just like
It's another
here
comparison.
It's precise. It's very precise.
I feel like that's another comparison I could make to Orson Scott Card. I don't know if you guys have read like Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead.
Also only Ender's Game.
Yeah,
Dude,
I have the other one.
Read Ender's Game to read Speaker for the Dead. Speaker for the Dead is one of my favorite books of all time, but you have to read Ender's Game first.
Yeah.
And then Speaker for the Dead. It's amazing. But he also will, kind of info dump, but it's also kind of, whatever we said, elegant. It's, palatable info dumps. But I definitely felt that the beginning chapter was Zeth, or whatever his name is. It's not that it wasn't the info dump that turned me off. It was I just got disoriented. The magic system is right. I mean, so it's like reading the scene from Inception, where
exactly.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt is like
Oh,
running
yeah.
through the hallway, and I was just like, I have no idea what the hell's going on now, dude.
I made my brain think it was The Matrix, and I never even saw that movie. I just assumed that it was happening.
That's pretty accurate too.
When I finally got my friend to read that scene, he just texted me. He's like, that was the coolest fight scene I've ever read in my entire life. I was like, hey, man, I like this book.
Wait till the end of the book.
Yeah, I was
Wait
like,
till
yeah.
the end.
Yeah, he like his internal struggle was so neat to see. And like as you learn more about him, his internal struggles even really like his part in Oathbringer, where he's given the sword and he talks to Dalinar, was so cool. I don't want to spoil it for Dee, but like
I haven't read Oathbringer either. I've only read the first 2. I've only read Way of Kings and Words of Radiance.
He gets better. He gets a lot better, and I'm excited.
I thought he improved a lot in Words of Radiance. I thought that. I thought that was really interesting. I enjoyed him more as a character in the second book than I did in the first book.
Yeah, we were talking about Rand going crazy. Seth is crazy in book 2 for sure.
Seth is not on Rand's level. Pause. No. I don't have to text my friends nonsense about what Rand just did in the woods. Like, no. Anyway,
Yeah.
Different book.
I have to read my notes.
Can we talk about how terrible Shallan is? Did anybody else just like detest
I
every
hated her parts in the book.
chapter?
Like, oh, Capsule, he might like me, but he's a priest, and I was like,
Yes,
And
that's
then,
why
like,
Yasna
it's like-
was my favorite of her chapters. Not
But then you also got Brandon Sanderson's like attempts at like trying to do like awkward, cute flirting romance, and it's like not cute. It's just
It's
only
supposed to be
awkward.
awkward, and it really is. It comes
It's
across
very
super
awkward.
awkward, but it's
Really-
supposed to. It's supposed to be.
So Pine
Look, you can do quirky, awkward.
girl. Shallon was me. Like he did it right.
Look, I was awkward too, and
But you're
I don't
not a
want to
girl.
like re-experience that life. I want to read. I don't know, but also like make me like the character. I don't know. She was. I
I
don't.
It
totally
was
like
interesting
Shalon.
by the end. By the end, I was with her. I was like, okay, it's
I was not.
you're interesting now. Sorry.
She
I
is
didn't like her till like halfway through book 2.
She's not my favorite, but I think she's definitely cool. She has motivations, and and part of it is because they keep back a lot of the elements that make her more interesting, I think, until book 2. But she's also like naive and super quirky, and she's trying to make her way in a situation where she has no idea what's going on. She feels obligated to try to take on this responsibility in a world that she clearly has no idea how to understand, how to figure out what's going on. And then she realizes that she might be able to fit there, but she still has to screw it up. Like by nature, she is trying to ruin everything she's building. And so that struggle I found really interesting, even if I personally couldn't relate to her directly in a lot of ways. I find that with Sanderson's writings, he's able to make me empathize with people who I don't have a lot in common with, or I can find a common ground in one element of their character and kind of start to at least see the world through their eyes, even if I don't agree with every choice they make, because she's not super smart in the beginning.
Well, and also though, she has moments that I think are throwaway moments that no one remembers. They just remember her super awkward. When she goes to the bookstore and they're like, oh, you want these romance books, and she just gets on their butts about how she actually wants these like bigger books. Like that's an awesome scene.
Well, any scene where she basically tells somebody off is pretty funny. Like I'm reading it through the second time now, and I didn't notice it as much the first time because I'm still trying to figure out the world. But like anytime, and you know, Yasna scolds her for doing it too much and doing it too bluntly. But like anytime she just goes off on somebody, it's pretty funny.
There is a part like halfway through where you look at it and you go, she went way too far. That was like annoyingly way too far. And
Yeah.
you go, ah.
No,
But
but that shows she can grow from somewhere. Like, I guess I am a blunt person who is really bad at talking with my friends and have been made fun of it my whole life. And it shows me that I can be better and maybe not be as bad. You know, like,
I mean,
also, like, how old is she? Is she like 19, 18? Like, how
I
old?
think she's 17 at the
Yeah.
Yeah,
beginning.
she's pretty young.
So she was my age when I read it. So this all makes more sense now in my head why I didn't get mad at her.
I can understand why some people don't like her. I do think she's less interesting in book 1 than the heavy hitters, but I feel like that's because they're saving some stuff for book 2. They had to do the flashbacks to Kaladin.
Yeah. So, well, she's the main character in book 2.
Do we
Yeah,
want to
she's
talk
way
about the
better book 2.
flashbacks with Kaladin?
Oh my
Heck
gosh,
yeah,
they're
that's
amazing.
like half of the book.
Because I
Or
feel
a
like
quarter
those
of
are
the book.
some of the weakest parts of the book in some ways.
Really?
Yeah.
I agree that they are probably the weakest parts, but that's just because of the nature of them being a flashback. I think the flashbacks in book 2 are also weak because you already know the climax. Like, there's no suspense.
Sanderson
Hearthstone Kaladin is it's not great.
Sanderson does a thing a lot of times in this series where it's almost like the Dune thing, which you may not get, I guess, if you haven't read Dune, but like, you know exactly what's going to happen at some point in the unknown future, but you don't know how you're going to get there. And yet somehow there's still some stuff that are kept vague. Because like, you know so much of what happens to Kaladin early on. You know that the brother dies. You know that he ends up being a soldier. You know he doesn't become a surgeon. You know how all of this is going to go. You don't know the details. And you kind of start to form an idea of what happened with Amaram, though you have no idea. At least I don't think most people will predict what actually happened with Amaram. And so I think that's going to work different levels for different people. But I feel like with the other two characters, the flashback sequences work better. Whereas Kaladin's, I think my guess is that Sanderson was trying to make him super relatable and put him in a story that we've kind of seen before so that it is something familiar we have in this brand new world. Because the boy that grows up to be a soldier and loses his brother is a very common story element. I think maybe that was the thing we're supposed to attach to with him. I'm not saying that they're terrible, but when I'm doing my reread right now, the Kaladin flashbacks, short of like the very first intro to the book with Sen and the stuff that's going to happen later on, basically after Tien's death, are the only actually interesting elements. You get to see him with Tien, you get to see other stuff. I don't want to be hyperbolic. They're not the only interesting elements. They are way more interesting than the other elements, though.
So I think what it does do a little bit, because I'm just remembering one now, keep in mind, 3-year-old memories popping into my head. But part of his flashbacks, I think, help us really understand the prejudice in this world, because I don't think it really gets brought up strongly outside of maybe some of the world camps, but his relationship, him being almost a Light Eyes, he's like a high Dark Eyes, and his relationship with this Light Eyes girl down the street as their friendship and everything. Like, yes, it's not the most interesting thing, it doesn't have the biggest payoff, but like I feel like it has the most nuanced discussion about this world's prejudice and really setting out what happens with Amaram, if that's how we say his name, happens.
Sure. It definitely lays the groundwork for some way more hard-hitting and interesting elements of that angle, I guess, later on. And you have to lay the groundwork somewhere.
But I think he kind of uses that excuse for a lot of the fat of this book, as in like stuff that could be trimmed off of the book.
I will not trim this book. Perfect. Shush.
No. Okay, like, so a ton of the short story chapters could completely be cut out.
No, never.
You can skip
I love
them.
all.
Yeah, it's just like extra.
Not okay. So Zeth's portion.
If it's not essential to the book, why include it? Why not just
Because
cut
some
it out?
people like it.
Okay, yeah,
Pure
right.
Lake-
So some people.
The Pure Lake was the best interlude. I'm just
Oh, I didn't like that one. I was like,
I
oh,
don't
what's
remember.
happening?
He had magic fish and buckets.
Now that Prince has brought up, he wants to remove them all because he's wrong.
All right, so I can compare this to Words of Radiance, where all of the short stories have some kind of overarching significance to the plot of that specific book. It felt like in Way of Kings, they were all just kind of random snippets, for world building, for
I think it's for
something.
pace
They didn't have
changing, largely.
anything to do with the plot of Way of Kings itself.
They definitely.
And I shouldn't have to wait till book 10 to get a payoff for the 250 pages you made me read in book 1.
There is an entire side plot that takes place exclusively in the interludes between the 3 books. So, like, I know what you're saying, but I feel like the interludes, especially in the first book, are mostly used for pace changing and world building. He's trying to explore the areas you don't get to see. So I kind of agree, but I kind of don't agree, because I did enjoy reading them when I got to them.
I literally was so excited when I saw that there were these random little sections of other parts of the world when I was even and reading this and had the attention span of someone who just reread all of Twilight. Like, I was so excited.
And that's why I think I like them, because I like to get, here's a pocket of, like, just look at a 30-minute section in this other world, and et cetera. You do get to see, there's one section where you get to see Shallan's family, and that's maybe one of the creepiest interludes you may ever have to read, and 2, I think that part is actually kind of important, which, like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more value to that chapter than just the creepiness of the dude pulling the animal's legs off over and over, because that's really freaking messed up and it makes me cringe all the time. But I feel like that chapter is actually way more interesting and powerful on its own right, especially when you add in Words of Radiance. But
and my favorite interlude is Geronids, which I don't think any of you remember, but that's the 8th one. It's on page 711. And I didn't notice it my first time through. I think my first time through, I was just like, oh, we're looking at Spren, because this is the chapter where people are studying Spren, and that they
remember this.
That if they write something down, it doesn't keep changing, because before it's changing shapes and colors, and if they write down an attribute of it, it holds steady. Now, my 17-year-old brain was like, oh, this is interesting. Fast forward to junior year of college, where I've just studied quantum mechanics. That's fucking quantum mechanics. I'm sorry. That's quantum mechanics. You can edit that. But I was just like, my mind was blown because he did mention that this magic system is based on the fundamental laws of physics specifically. And that's like, I was just geeking out so much that literally he was having spren be quantized. That if you measured, because that's the thing in quantum, if you measure something, then that's how it is. But if you're not measuring it, it gives it in multiple states of reality. And I was
Almost like it's a science fiction book and not a magic.
I imagined like the Schrodinger's cat theory with the spren. Like until you measure it, you don't know. It can be anything.
Now, Nip, I do agree that his magic system is super structured. It's a very hard magic system. But for some reason, when I read Sanderson, I'm not using like my science fiction reading mindset because I have two different mindsets. When
I'm mostly just kidding. He does spend so much time like giving you definitive levels of things that I mean I love it. I like science fiction and fantasy, so it's not a thing for me. But
I love science fiction, but I can't read science fiction for 1,000 pages. I can read fantasy for 1,000 pages.
I guess I don't know how long Leviathan Awakes is, but it's probably half that.
It's only like 600 pages.
Okay, yeah.
There are not many books that are over 1,000 pages. They're very
No, there's not. And there's many that are over 1,000 pages that probably should not be.
none of
Way of
these.
Kings being one of them.
These are
No.
Dude, I could cut so much out of this book and make it into a better book.
Okay.
I don't care if we're talking when all 10 books are released and then I put out some part that all of a sudden is essential in book 8. Okay, what if Brandon Sanderson gets run over by a car tomorrow when he's going to get his coffee? And so I had to read some stupid interlude for nothing.
I think
Oh, poor
Payoff
you.
in book 8.
Poor
I
you.
think you could cut off significant
You could
sections
cut
of
out
this
all the-
book and have it still, all of the main through line plots still make sense, but it would not be the experience that it is without those. I think that's a whole, like, I feel like if you're the type of person that looks on the shelf and sees that book and goes, oh, dude, that book's so freaking huge, I'm in for it. That's the type of thing you want. Like, you don't want I'm not going to pick up the, 300-page fantasy standalone. I'm going to pick up the freaking 1,000-page. I want to read some bullcrap in here, man.
Like, I just want Stormlight to be Mistborn again, because I think Mistborn is a very largely concise fantasy trilogy. Like, it's only, I think the whole trilogy is only, 3,000 pages, maybe 2,000 pages? I don't know. I can't remember how long they all are. But you don't get to have these nuanced sideshows, so I don't feel like I know that world as well as I'm getting to know this world. And I don't read this, like, I'm never going to pick this book up for a reread and be like, okay, I need to read it in a week for BookTube. No, I'm going to read it for as long as I want because I'm going to just sit there and be happy and fall into my favorite world. Like, that's what this is to me, which is I feel like how people feel about Wheel of Time when they really love it, and I don't understand them. So I get if people don't understand me. I get that that's a thing.
Like, you could do hours and hours and hours of Wheel of Time trivia just because there's so much in there, and it takes multiple rereads to get even half of the story. And I think he's trying to do something like that with Stormlight. They're interesting. The Arcanium Unbounded, I've enjoyed reading the little short stories. I'm not in love with Lift, but, I mean, she's okay. And some of the other stories that have come out of there. So he's definitely crafting something really neat, like in the whole scope of things. But I'm kind of with Pints a little bit on this one. I could have skipped all the interludes.
Yeah, I think that maybe
I'm
just too much of a fanboy of the like. I'm kind of with Angela here, where when I picked up this book, I was hoping that it was going to be filled with what you guys are calling fat. I like to chew on that fat.
I wanted a really good steak, not a mediocre one.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe you said it needed some more editing. I like my steak rare as well, so.
It's a good Midwest view on steak. I appreciate it. I'm out here on the East Coast where they're all like seafood, and I'm like,
is it? Oh crap! It was Warbreaker where a character was talking about hating seafood. It was Warbreaker. I thought it was.
Oh, here's your PSA, everyone, to read Warbreaker before Words of Radiance, please. It'll make your life better.
Yeah, I did. I have
already
not
messed
read
up.
Warbreaker.
Before you do Oathbringer, do Warbreaker. because
Really
there's a
happens to
scene
a
at
lot.
the end
Okay.
of Oathbringer that you need to know what happens in Warbreaker. You have to know.
Well, you don't need to, but it
Definitely
It-
don't
it-
need to.
It makes it a lot.
As somebody that likes Oathbringer more than most people seem to like Oathbringer, it's not necessary to like Oathbringer. But
Yeah.
also, I just said I love to chew on the fat of the world, so
Well, I remember seeing the consensus seemed to be like Oathbringer. Most people did not like as much as
yeah,
the other two.
that's what I've heard. But for me,
It got a lot of flack, at least in the Amazon reviews.
yeah, most people that I've talked to didn't like Oathbringer as much, and I think that there's part of the reason for that is because there's about 10 hours extra of politics and world building that wasn't in the other books. But the ending for that book is so insane. There's so many moving pieces, and they all come together in a powerful way. We'll say,
The
He does it
ending is
every
great.
time. It seems.
yeah.
I think
And
for
the
me,
emotional moments are
Oathbringer
great.
didn't- Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
For me, Oathbringer didn't meet my Words of Radiance hype, if only because Words of Radiance is my favorite book ever. Like,
Really?
That's you're
Yeah,
the
I'm still Way of
Shallan
Kings.
love maybe is like part of that.
The Shallan love, actually, because there was parts of the Kaladin arc I'm remembering in that book that's sticking out to me right now
Mhm.
from Words of Radiance that were
Okay.
really impressive to me. But I don't know, Words of Radiance, I just remember the last 400 pages was an entire morning of my life, and I've never read that many pages that quickly before, you know? Like, I just woke up in college, didn't have to do anything, and just was in my really a mediocre apartment and read it all day.
Heck yeah.
The ends of Word of Radiance, I spent like 3 a.m. I just kept reading and kept reading and kept reading.
And I just didn't have that same ending experience with Oathbringer, although it is still very epic. You're right, it's still very epic. It's just, anyways, we're on a tangent. This is accidentally becoming all 3 books, and poor Ramsey's going to have to edit a lot if he wants this to be concise.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think I liked Words of Radiance more than Way of Kings, even though Shallan is like my least favorite character out of all of them in the Stormlight. And Kaladin's my favorite character, even after Words of Radiance. I think I like that book more. I think the interludes had something to do with the actual story of the book. And then I don't know. He does a good job of adding on to continuing the story that he started in Way of Kings. So I'm excited to read the whole rest of it. I hope he doesn't get hit by a car getting coffee. I want to read. I want to finish the dang thing. Don't pull George Martin, please, and finish your dang series.
He will. He's been writing one of them every 3 years. What more could you want?
Hey,
No,
man,
I think he's
before-
going to. He's already done writing. He keeps a tally on his website of
Yeah.
that he updates. I think Brandon Sanderson is fantastic. He's very accountable. Huh?
He has this blog every year he posts on his birthday called The State of Sanderson, and that's how you know what he's working on, what he has worked on. It's my favorite
Nice.
blog post of the year.
That is so good for fans, man. I feel like,
November
yeah.
19th, everyone. Great day.
All right. So last question will be reaction to the ending with Dalinar and Kaladin. What you're most excited for in book 2, which we've kind of already talked about.
We can get Jeannie's perspective because she just started book 2, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. What are you most excited about for book 2?
I don't know. I'm one of those, I just like going along for the rides. I don't necessarily like think too far ahead. I just like go with the flow.
But you clearly liked the first book enough to go straight into the second one.
Yeah. And then, but then can we do spoilers for the second one? Because I already got to one seed and then I looked up spoilers because I was like, that person can't be dead.
You looked up spoilers? Oh my god.
I always look up spoilers.
I already know what spoiler you're talking about.
I did
too.
too.
Friend who
That's
texted
literally
me,
like last page spoiler.
I know. I was just like, she
Like
can't be
last
dead.
5 pages.
You're
was like,
supposed
this
to
is
spend the whole...
I knew that she wasn't dead.
I knew that she wasn't dead.
You
so I
can
just
cut
need-
this out. I know we're
Yeah,
literally
I'll cut it
spoiling
out.
the end of the next book, but I knew she wasn't dead from the get-go.
My friend texted
Well,
me.
at first I was like, wow, that was ballsy. He actually killed her off. And then like
Nah.
thinking about it after a second, I was like,
you heard
no,
the
he
knife
didn't.
hit the wood on the ship. Like
I was like,
you knew.
that death had no like emotional merit, and I would think that from him I would get something big, and I was like,
oh, man.
she's a major
Not necessary.
character.
Okay, we can't
What?
finish the book and then we'll talk
Okay,
about this.
well, should we just skip this part?
Yeah, okay, we'll do a
Let's
hard
talk about
edit.
the last plot point that's on your discussion page. I want to talk about.
Okay,
Wait,
hard
wait,
edit
I'm
right
sorry.
now.
There-
Start back over. Ready, go.
Okay.
Clap.
What was the question?
Okay.
What are we most looking forward to?
Reaction to the ending, where with Kaladin, Dalinar, the tower, and what you guys thought about that.
Epic.
Okay, so I think I put in my review, obvious bad guy ends up being bad guy.
Adeline was right.
Yeah.
I mean, for
And-
me,
and-
it was, like Pine said, it was satisfying. And honestly, if it went any
Mhm.
other way, I don't know what was going to happen.
The conversation about how much is a life worth was really cool. I
Mhm.
thought when he talked about, well, how much is a life worth, and he's like, oh, the slave masters say it's so many emerald bromes, but my dad would say it's priceless. He's like, well, coincidentally, that's how much I just paid for you guys.
Yeah, it was really special.
Basically, whatever you have in a story that is going to have some like stupid, thick, laid on like bromance and or like honor, loyalty, like just as thick as you can lay it on, it's gonna freaking make me be a little bit of a baby and probably cry. And so,
Yeah,
Did you
like,
cry?
I
Did you
cried.
cry?
Sam and Frodo really, really get to you.
Well, dude, okay, yes, like I can think of I freaking cry whenever I watch The Fast and the Furious because the final scene, the first movie, it's the stupidest freaking movie that exists, and I'll freaking cry in it, dude. I don't care.
He does a
Cute.
wheelie and his tires burn.
Well, no,
out.
it's when he freaking
Impossible.
gives him the car keys, Okay,
Oh,
anyway.
it's so cute. So cute.
Dude. So when they're freaking about to escape, they have their freedom. They've come out of their depression. They've banded together. They're full-on brothers, and they see this freaking Light Eyes, who they're prejudiced against. They have no reason to respect him in any way except the one positive example Adolin kind of showed with a prostitute. He has no reason to trust these people. He turns around and says, "We gotta save those people, dude. Like we gotta
They
turn
were
back."
all right there too.
Yeah,
they were like, yeah,
free.
we're doing
They were
this.
completely free, and they're like, "Nope, we'll go." Then they go and they save him, knowing that there's no like they don't trust Dalinar. They don't know that he's actually a freaking baller hero guy. They just think he's another one of the people. They kind of know that he's a little different, but like Kaladin thinks it's all crap. He doesn't trust anyone, and so when they get to the moment where they freaking save him, and of course there's a Superman and he does all of his power things, that's all awesome. But then, like you said, the moment when they go back to the town, and it's the whole sequence of they think they're dead because Sadeas comes back and says they freaking all died, and then Navani like burns the prayer of like justice into the ground. And when he comes back and he buys the Bridgeman by freaking stabbing Oathbringer through the prayer of justice in the ground, you're like, nah, screw y'all. We're all good. And then he gives up his freaking weapon, he gives up his armor, and then he saves all the Bridgemen, and everybody is noble and heroes, and it's all happy, and it's so powerful.
Just so you all know at home, we had a bullet point about if Michael Nip cried when he cried.
Did he cry? Yes. Why did he cry though? Now we know.
Anytime there's a bromance, I'll probably cry. I get chills almost anytime there's a major twist. Like when freaking Kaladin throws Gaz down on the ground the first time, I got chills. Like anytime you see a character who just like is beat the crap down and then stands up and rises above whatever crap they've been surrounded by, I'm almost immediately going to get chills.
So Ramsey, he needs Street Lightbringer, right? That's what I'm all hearing right now, is that you need Lightbringer in your life.
Dude, Lightbringer's so good. Like it is
Oh, no.
so good. Like it's like Stormlight, Wheel of Time, Lightbringer. Like if I had a third hand, it's in here.
No, I
Like,
don't put
it's so
Lightbringer
good.
as high as Stormlight Archive, but in terms of like honor, brotherly bonds, and little guy.
That one takes a little bit longer. It's not book 1. It's like book 2 and 3.
You guys got me worked
Book
up.
1
I'm
and 2
freaking
together,
sweating.
one Stormlight. So
Yeah,
Those
that's
are
true.
tears, Michael. Those are tears. Accept
Those
it.
they aren't tears. I am sweating like crazy right now.
You just got so worked up at this
Oh, yeah,
end. You're
dude.
just like, dang.
I got so excited by the ending of this freaking book, and I've talked to my best friends that finished it, and they didn't just the imagery of the Oathbringer going into the
Mhm.
Justice Prayer in the ground when he buys him back is so good.
And then right after that, he goes up and beats.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
freaking.
He beats Elokar. It, like,
Oh, but
breaks his
you know-
breastplate.
One more Wheel of Time, not Wheel of Time, Way of King's thought. There's too many W's of somethings in fantasy. Fantasy naming needs to be better. And
It
more.
sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks bad.
But so we haven't really talked about the world or the magic system in depth, but I really like this continent. I like the weather system, and I like how the animals have evolved to handle the weather. Like this was me geeking out. It's like, oh, I love that they are all shells. Like they do have cows, but they're like shell cows. And I like these plants that really come back in. Rescind, thank you, and then go back out. And someone needs to answer this question for me. Do we have the interlude in this book where we see Seth's old land?
Yes, we do.
No.
With a merchant.
When the Thalens go
Like
to
the grass
visit.
that didn't retract.
Yeah,
the
she's
merchants.
like,
Ah.
that stupid grass.
That's like, no, I was just talking about how much I just like the continent of it and how the storms affect the actual animals and plant life, and how we even get to see plant life like ours on our world past the mountains and stuff like that. Like that was like some of the world building I found so cool, because I feel like even in books with amazing world building like Wheel of Time, that land is generally like our land. There are desert lands, there's grassland, like, you know, there's wetlands, the land isn't very different from where I could go on our earth, versus this has a completely different weather system. It has different animals, it has different plants, because it has this different weather system that comes through and is so destructive. And I just thought that was kind of like Nip's been saying, it's more sci-fi because it's like a different planet. You really feel it's a different world, it's a different planet. And I really like that. And I think that's also why I like the interludes, because I got to learn more about this planet.
I like how the map looks like a hurricane,
Yeah.
or like a hurricane S. And then they talked about like the language. Yeah, the language, if you fold it in half, it's considered perfect. And like the map, if you fold it in half, it's like pretty close to being perfect.
Not quite.
Kind of a neat. Yeah, it's not quite, but pretty close.
And they have to build the entire architecture different. Like the cities are completely designed a different way to expect the high storms. Everything in their lives is based around the high storms and the weeping. Like it is
like
a different
a
culture.
hurricane.
And,
I
like,
never ever caught that.
don't really know.
I wasn't really looking at the map a lot when I read it. Oh my gosh, it is. That's
I
pretty
started
cool.
looking at the map a lot when Kaladin has the dream where he's in the storm.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because it like talked about where all the different people were. And then he realized, like, wait, that actually is something that's real. I saw something that's real.
Well, and the Shattered Plains themselves are very cool. And what are those monsters called with the gems, whatever they are?
Chasm fiends.
Mm.
Chasm
I
fiends.
kept thinking of them as the blasted ended scroots in Harry Potter, which I know is not right, but that's what my brain put in as a placeholder.
Really, they remind me of a D&D monster. I have to figure out. Ankeg. It's like some weird ant creature.
Yeah.
I like how they had overlapping voices. Where like
Well, the trumpeting, like they have multiple trumpets of voices. Anytime a fantasy or alien creature does that, it creeps me out in a cool way.
And we don't learn a lot about the Parshendi in this book, but I also love them.
Oh, the thing, okay, so maybe this is a weird thing. I think that when you are reading this book, if you don't have any of the illustrations, I think it's extremely easy to think that the Parshendi are humans that look different. I don't think, at least with me and the circle of friend groups that I was reading, I don't think we understood until we saw someone put a picture of the Parshendi. Like, I just assumed they were just dark-skinned people, and they don't look like dark-skinned people in any of the art for the books.
No, I mean, I think I always knew they were a different humanoid species because of how their armor is so enmeshed with their skin.
Yeah, I don't know how I thought about it, but it wasn't until much, much later in the book that I just was curious. I was like, why do they keep describing these people? Like, I thought they were just like dark-skinned people or people with different skin like colors or whatever. And then I saw it was a picture, I think, from the book, like one of the pictures that was in the book. I was like, oh, these are humanoid creatures that they're not humans. I don't know how I missed it reading so much of the book, but I feel like that wasn't explained in a way that I caught.
I
Yeah,
think
the
for
picture I
that,
saw, they look like Klingons with like the big
Yeah.
forehead.
Uh-huh.
yeah, I just thought of them as like humanoid because
Maybe it's just
and they
me
also
then.
there were like some things with that bothered me that I'm hoping in the later books is not going where I think it's going right now, because they kept on doing like noble savage and everything, and I'm like, I really hope that Sanderson does not go down this road and make it kind of racist. And I was like, please don't do this, because then they're like enslaved and everything, and then it's like, I hope.
Okay,
it's not.
yeah. So, all right.
It
So
goes
that is
places.
mentioned in Way of Kings, then, right?
What?
That the Parshendi and the Parshmen connection.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
the one of the
No,
reveals
that-
in the Way of Kings, yeah, Angel
Yeah.
said.
So I recognize that, or I
you don't know
always,
why they're different until book
Yeah,
two.
you don't know why.
yeah,
In book
yeah.
1, the reveal is that Yasna thinks that they are the Voidbringers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so I pictured the Parshmen as like human looking, but the Parshendi I always pictured kind of like almost insectoid, almost like they had like an exoskeleton or something.
Mhm.
And I think that's how it. Yeah, I think that's how it actually is. I just must have missed it until a
We
large
talk
portion
about them
of the
like
book.
jumping over the chasms
Mhm.
and stuff,
Sure.
doing weird grasshoppery type stuff. So I always pictured them kind of like insectoid, humanoid, very alien.
Also, I will be interested to hear what you think about the Parshendi situation after book 3. I think that's when I guess you'll know what you think about it.
Yeah.
The big reveal in book 3 is it changes the way you look at the whole world.
Okay.
Cool.
I also don't think it was that surprising though, and that's maybe why I don't like it as much as Words of Radiance.
Oh, it hit me. I was like, what?
I was like,
Well, now we'll just look at the spoiler.
It neither
Beanie, how
surprised
can you
me,
do that?
neither surprised me or blew my mind. It was like, oh, okay, that kind of checks. I see what he's doing there. But the parts of Oathbringer that hit me harder were mostly character moments.
Yes. So
Yeah.
what I will do is I will put everybody's YouTube channel down in their description. I'll see if there's a way that I can put up a card to get everybody linked for a subscription. If you're not subscribed to these guys, you're subscribed to me. I don't know what you're doing because they're better than I am. And this has been a lot of fun. I want to do this again. I hope you guys had fun, and we will end the video here. So see you later.